reported to the Township Board on that event, and I advised the Township Board of their options, one of which is to appeal the district court decision to the circuit court. I advised the board that, in my opinion, there's a basis to do that. The Township Board met in a special meeting yesterday and discussed this matter in closed session, and as a result of that discussion, when they came out of the closed session, made a decision to pursue their appeal remedy. And in fact, I mailed off to the circuit court today the initial paperwork that's necessary to initiate that. So the district court decision is being appealed. That appeal will be likely pending for several months before it's adjudicated through the circuit court appeal process. And we'll find out whether a circuit court judge thinks that the district court judge was in error in his ruling. And if the circuit court judge concludes the district court judge was in error, the circuit court judge will have the opportunity to correct that error, or have Judge Croft correct that error back in district court. So that's the succinct, I think, more or less succinct report on where we are with the process. So this matter remains in litigation, so to speak, and away we go with the appeal process. See how it comes out.
Yeah. Are there any possible changes to the zoning that could be proposed for future to prevent this from occurring anywhere else again? Being someone that lives next to vacant property that could be used in a similar fashion. I'm not sure if it's zoned exactly the same way, but is there any possibility that that ordinance could be used to be more enforceable in the future?
Yes, as to other properties at least, not necessarily this property. And without going into details, because the discussion I referred to at the board did occur in closed session, so I'm not going to discuss details. But the subject of possibly reviewing the relevant parts of the zoning ordinance for amendment to kind of tie this type of situation down more explicitly was discussed by the board. And the board did not make a decision on that aspect of the discussion or resulting from that aspect of the discussion. But if I was to surmise or suggest, I think the board at this point is preferring to wait for the outcome of the circuit court appeal. Because if the township's position prevails on appeal, then, and this kind of land use is determined to not be a permissible accessory use in the residential zone, that judicial finding would affect not only the Allen property, but all other properties in the RR zone, and therefore you might conclude that would negate the need for a text amendment. So I think that's a path we're going down first.
Y'all know me as Ronnie, and that's what I gotta tell them. I'm in that area, so when they call, is this going back to court again? I mean, the appeal is on.
Yes, and to elaborate just a little bit for those who wonder, what is the process? It's pretty simple. I initiate the appeal by filing a claim of appeal, and I have to file some other documents and do this and that, little loose ends, in the circuit court and the district court. And the district court transfers the record to the circuit court, and then I get a transcript prepared from the district court to court reporter, and send it to the circuit court. All that'll take place over probably the next 3 to 4 weeks, I would guess. Then, once the district court says, or once the court reporter says, here's the transcript of what happened on April 6th, then that starts a timeline for briefing. And I have a handful of weeks to prepare my appeal brief, and the other party has their opportunity after that to file their appeal brief. And once the court has those appeal briefs, then they set the matter for what's called oral argument. And the attorneys have an opportunity to speak to the court directly about issues they want to raise. I would not expect the appeal process in circuit court to be concluded until more likely than not, late summer, early fall at best.
Does that mean he can run the bikes and so on and so forth and do?
At this point, the only court ruling is that the land use does not violate the zoning ordinance. We certainly did, I personally discussed with Mr. Allen's attorney after the court proceedings that that decision did not in any manner affect the ability of the township to administer and enforce the noise ordinance if in fact there's evidence of a violation of that ordinance. That's a totally separate issue. This case in court so far focused on whether the underlying use itself was permissible at all.
There's a lot of people who are very unsettled about it, but this is good news.
Okay, my name is Judy Oberst, and I'm a resident on TU Avenue. And the motocross park is right in my backyard. And the noise is really terrible. And when he's revving over those jumps, you can't open a window because the noise is so incredible. So is my understanding that during the appeals process, he can take as many bikes on that property as he wants? Is that, because last night, yesterday, he had his son on there and a friend who was running around, no adult supervision, and he was riding that kid on that bike. And I'm really torn about this for a lot of reasons. I'm a school psychologist. I work in Van Buren County. I don't work in Kalamazoo County. But it really borders almost on a CPS referral. I mean, he's not supervising these kids. And I guess, anybody can send their kid out there to run around on a bike. But, I guess I need to talk to my union rep about, do I need to report it? I mean, can he do anything he wants on, can he run as many bikes as he wants on that property?
Okay, here's how I have to answer that question today. There's no court ruling that provides any specific limitation on how many motorcycles can run on that track at any given time.
Okay.
I can tell you that when we were in court, I believe Mr. Allen's attorney represented that there would be, the track would be used by three kids, his son and two other boys, I believe friends of Trevor's, who are all engaged in one way or another in competitive motocross. And this is fashioned by them as a practice facility for those competitive endeavors that they engage in. So all I can tell you is that was a representation of the court, that this is a facility for the Allen son and two friends.
So then my follow-up to you is this: if you have 3 bikes operating on that property, does that potentially create a noise violation?
Well, I can't answer that in the abstract, other than to say, the more motorcycles on the property at the same time, it's probably logical to assume that that would create a different level of noise than one motorcycle at the same time, all other things being equal. And that level of noise could potentially be more disturbing to other people than one motorcycle. Again, I'm just assuming. But we make judgments about enforcement actions after an investigation, and the facts are plugged into the rule of law, the requirements of the noise ordinance. So I can't answer in the abstract. If the three motorcycles run out there, is that going to violate the noise ordinance? I can't answer that question. No one could right now.
So how does it determine that? Do we just have to wait and then call and say, it's noisy out here, and it's too noisy out here? I mean, how?
The township.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I kind of want to know, because it's noisy.
No, you're not putting me on the spot, and I think actually your question provides an opportunity to say something, folks like you, maybe someone else who's interested in this, who's here tonight. The township doesn't have the capability to simply park a township official outside the Allen property and monitor their property 24/7, 365. That's not gonna happen. The township, with enforcing the noise ordinance, as with most any ordinance, generally is dependent upon some kind of a resident complaint or concern that triggers an investigation.
Okay.
So if a complaint comes into the township office about, in this case, a noise violation, the township is going to, if it has the capability at that time to send an ordinance enforcement officer out to investigate immediately and hear the result, I suspect that's going to happen, if that's possible. But here's the reality. The noise ordinance, proving a noise ordinance violation can be very difficult because it's subjective.
Sure.
You know, unlike a junk car ordinance where if you've got a junk car in your property without a plate, you can't start that thing up and run it. That's a violation of the junk ordinance every day. Objective. Noise ordinance, that's much more subjective. And it's going to depend, a successful noise ordinance case will be very dependent on testimony from other residents in court, being able to say that here's where I live compared to this property, and on such a day at about this time, I was sitting in my whatever living room, and the noise was so great coming from the motorcycle or motorcycles on that track that I could not, fill in the blank. And whatever that fill in the blank is, has to be enough to persuade a district court judge that there's something about either that level of noise or the duration of that noise that creates an unreasonable disturbance to other people's ability to enjoy their property. Just because it creates noise in and of itself, that doesn't rise to necessarily the level of proving unreasonable disturbance. If it did, and you had a super sensitive neighbor, I guess you couldn't run your gas lawnmower. You
Generator.
couldn't, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So the township's practical ability to enforce that ordinance as applied to this property or any property is very significantly dependent on property owners and how diligently they report and maintain their own records about what happened and when.
Yeah. So for the summer, though, it's probably going to be pretty noisy out there, right?
I don't
Well, it is.
have any
It's in my backyard.
basis
It
to know
is.
how often anybody's going to ride out there. I don't know. I guess
Well, he's out there a fair amount. He's out there a fair amount on the weekends when there's nobody to call. I mean, that's the fact. He's out there on the weekends, and he's out there when you guys are gone after 4 o'clock, and that's when he's out there. I mean, and so, it's not just, I don't know what's gonna happen to someone when the kid's not in school.
I have a question. Is it, if for instance, someone were to videotape what's going on and has the sound, is that something that would be admissible for the residents, the property owners around there?
most likely, if a person was recording, not necessarily videotaping, but recording the sound of what they were personally seeing and could testify in court that I recorded this on such a date and time, and the sound you're hearing is the sound of a motorcycle or 3 motorcycles, whatever it may be, on the Allen motocross track, as I heard it from my kitchen, living room, bedroom, trying to sleep, whatever it may be, I believe that'd be admissible. Now, whether the level of sound in that recording would rise to the level of meeting our burden of proof, that depends on what it sounds like. something like that can be persuasive.
Yeah, it's just a real annoyance. It's truly annoying in numerous respects. And I think it's really gonna hurt my property value. That's what I'm really worried about. I mean, I wouldn't want that in my backyard, and I wouldn't wanna buy a house with that in the backyard. That's a fact. So I'm glad you're appealing it.
I didn't get your last name, Ann.
They want their license.
Jogerst.
I signed in.
Hi, I'm Tanya Nash. I'm a neighbor as well, on TU Avenue. And first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the time, energy, and probably the resources you're putting into this. It certainly is very concerning for many of us neighbors. As you alluded to, our property values certainly has impacted a lot of, hopefully will not impact a lot of us as we put our hard-earned money into that land and property to make a nice place to live and raise families. And then secondly, the other thing, it is concerning as a neighbor, the quality of life, whether it's the noise pollution, the dirt, the sand that's whipping around. Of course, we start to envision traffic flows or things if it becomes something other than just for the young man. It is very concerning. So I appreciate the time, the energy again that you're putting into this and your willingness to go forward, because I think it is important, not only to the neighbors, but to the township. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?